day 35, going on to 36 later, of the Iran Revolution. And here's what's happening on this February 1st, 2026, coming to you live from Israel, where there is a lot of news constantly from morning till night, every day, about will he or won't he? Will Trump attack Iran? And specifically the Ayatollah and the IRGC to replace the regime, as he has said it is time to do. And as he has promised the protesters and revolutionaries that help is on the way, and that they will not die in vain, and that they should keep going onto the streets, take control of the institutions, and write down the names, etc. He said all those things and motivated people to go out in the streets, as has the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, who told people to go out on the streets and fight for their freedom. And they've been doing that, and they've been dying, being slaughtered wholesale by the thousands every day. And so far, we have not seen the promised help come from the outside, and we've not seen any kind of material assistance arrive to the people of Iran. Yesterday, there were obviously a few explosions around Iran. Yesterday morning, leaky gas pipes apparently. Seems to be a maintenance problem they have continually. And yeah, so right now we're seeing a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of talk about whether or not Trump's political gambit is basically to talk the Iranian regime down to the point where they basically will agree to stop their nuclear production and to limit their ballistic missile arsenal. And that if that happens, that would be enough for him to call off any military strikes, or just not to send any military strikes, rather. And then that would be enough to sort of end this current situation. At the same time, you have threats coming from the Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran saying any attack on Iran would spark a regional war. There are rumors that Iraq would back Iran because they're both Shia countries now, of course. That would be quite something, given that Iraq is only in the state that it's in thanks to the United States getting rid of Saddam Hussein. And you'd think they'd be a bit more grateful, but no. Yeah, and I know terrible things happened, a lot of people died, whatever. But a dictator there was overthrown, and those people were given a chance at democracy, which they have still currently to this day. You may call it a very weak democracy. You may say, well, it's kind of a joke. It's very tribalistic. Well, yes, but they still have elections in a democratic format, and they actually do vote for, who they want to lead them. The situation with the other nations that are pressuring the U.S. not to attack also continues with Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Turkey, all basically afraid that they will get attacked if the U.S. uses its airspace, any of their airspaces, to attack Iran from. But the reality is, those U.S. airbases are U.S. territory, and they're not the territory of the nations that host them, at least not as long as those U.S. airbases exist there. So for all intents and purposes, all of the necessary pieces are in place, without going into specifics about which exact pieces exist. But if you know, you know, and if you don't know, well, you can follow me, and I may get into a more detailed version of what we know is there in a later video. There's a lot over there, and there's more on the way. Israeli media, I should say, are also on both sides of the fence, with some saying that Trump is likely to not do anything, and others saying that even if he does nothing, Israel should go ahead and strike Iran by itself, and that what we're seeing is similar to the run-up to the 12-day war, and Israel is basically preparing to strike Iran by itself. And I can tell you that the 12-day war did not happen without the U.S. knowledge beforehand, despite what you may have read. Israel did not strike Iran without the U.S. knowing that these things were going to happen. They're working very much hand in hand because that is the nature of the U.S. and American military alliance. We share almost all, not everything, but almost all information with the U.S. and they share quite a bit of it with us too. That's one of the reasons the U.S. invests in Israel is because they know they get reliable, credible, and useful and actionable intelligence about the situation, the realpolitik, about the actual military capabilities and operations that Israel conducts in the region. And there's a very highly improbable probability. Right? It is close to zero. Nothing is zero, but it is almost a negligible probability that Israel would attempt to attack Iran at this point in an attempt to actually overthrow the regime by itself without the U.S. cooperating in some way. It's just not going to happen. Is Israel possibly going to attack more of Iran's air defense systems and ballistic missiles systems in order to make sure that they can't just start shooting rockets at us willy-nilly if the U.S. hits Iran in a preemptive strike or a strike of some kind? The answer is yes. There is a non-zero probability that Israel would do that, even without U.S. permission, because we still have to think about ourselves in Israel. Just like America, we have to think about ourselves as America first, and in Israel, we have to think about ourselves as Israel first. And here, it's a matter of existential survival. Actually, there's a very big probability that those ballistic missiles could do a lot of damage, even more than last time. Even though there is a significant amount of limitation that is affecting the Iranian offensive capability, given all the damage that was done to it last time back in June, right? So it's not as if they can just shoot off the same amount of arsenal that they shot last time very easily, because a lot of their capabilities have been eliminated. But that doesn't mean they have no capabilities. They still have roughly, by any estimates, anywhere from a fifth to a half of the capabilities that they had prior to the 12-day war, and that they still have that ability. And yes, you can argue, well, as soon as they fire off any rockets or missiles, Israel would know exactly where they were fired from and could eliminate those targets. And that is true. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that they would get every single one immediately. And it also doesn't mean that the rockets that they would fire would do no damage. And that's why Israel has to calculate very carefully what it can do. Hello. I see you folks. Thank you for liking and subscribing. I appreciate it very much. Okay, that's the quick update for you guys. I'll see you in the next one. I will give you an update later about what's happening. This is just a walk and talk, and I'm done with it now. So until the next one, guys, peace and shalom.